Welcome to episode number 7 of the Meditative
Yeah,
Monkeys podcast.
that's it. That's all. Hi, Benjamin. How are you?
Hello, Stephen. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Benjamin just sent me a YouTube video, and it's part of our first topic. I'll let him introduce it, but wow, it was nice. I recommend everyone go watch this video.
Yeah, so today we want to maybe cover a couple of topics. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll start with the conversation on, let's just call it games and relating it to a movement practice. And I'm thinking in terms of, like, when I say games, I guess the starting point was I was thinking about video games because that's something that
Sure.
you and I, a passion or a hobby that you and I share.
Both personally and collectively, we've done both. We have our personal games that we play, and we've played our collective
Yeah,
games. So.
yeah. But then I think maybe it can expand into a conversation about just games in general, the idea of what a game is and how it relates to training.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were just looking at a video from the Game Maker's Toolkit, which is a really great channel about video games. I guess it's directed maybe towards game developers and breaking down what makes games interesting and using different examples of different games. And in this one, it was about, it's called the psychological trick that can make rewards backfire, but it was about the psychology of rewards in video games. And I'll include a link in the description if anyone wants to watch it.
Put a little pew.
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can. Yeah, we'll put somewhere to access it.
Something like that.
And there were just some ideas in that I thought we could, particularly the ideas around extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and what kind of circumstances kind of encourages us or drives us to in this case to play and to keep playing it and to play at high quality.
Of course.
So
I think we would tie that into fitness too, right? As you were saying, like,
exactly.
Tie that into like potentially like, how trainers can work with their clients and make sure their clients don't just necessarily just come there to perform movements, but actually take on the sessions as a learning experience, as something that they want to personally continue growth with. You know what I mean? Whether they're with you or by themselves, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I think growth is maybe the name of the game in this sense, but
in all aspects.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, there are lots of different ways we can cover this, but I guess what are your first reactions or thoughts from watching that video?
Directly to games or even cross-platform?
Whatever. What comes to mind when you're watching that? What stood out to you?
What comes to mind? Honestly, first and foremost, being a gamer, the first thing that comes to my mind is the games that I lost interest in really quickly versus the games that I've played for years and years and years and years and years on end.
Yeah.
And seeing just how you kind of talked about it, like the extrinsic and the intrinsic motivation, and how like the games kind of cross correlated with that. And I realized like, oh yeah, this game has a lot of intrinsic, this game has a lot of extrinsic, and that's why I kind of stopped playing this game versus this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like let's see, to give some examples, like my favorite game that I play is Dota 2. And it's peer-to-peer, so you're in like a battleground arena. You all have your character, you have your skills.
You're playing with other players, but that's
you're playing five on five. Yeah, peer-to-peer,
as opposed to like playing against computer controlled characters, like just essentially becoming a single player game.
Exactly, right. And there's just, it's so much room for, as he was saying, like interpretation and just exploration. And even though there's objectives and you have the same objectives every game, there's endless ways to get to those objectives. There's like set items, all these things where you can choose combinations of what you use that are definitely unique to every single game you play. So it's not like you go in, do the same thing over and over again. It's unique to every game you play. And then they've actually added in kind of random drop items at certain time frames of the game. So you have like time goals right? But they're not necessarily fully indicative of you winning the game, but they can kind of add in. So it's not like, oh fuck, if I didn't get this, we lost. That's it, game over.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like weird ways you can go about stuff. So it's very kind of intrinsic. You really got to match with the characters you're playing, the people you're playing with, all these things. And then the peer-to-peer, obviously winning is one of it. And then
Sure.
another game I would kind of explain on the other end was like what game was that recently? And I haven't gone too much into it, so I could be kind of talking shit about it, but it was a little bit more like I was playing Uncharted.
Which one?
I'm not too sure. It was just it was at George's house, at my buddy's house.
Okay. Was it on PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4? Do you know?
The new PlayStation 4.
So it's maybe the latest one, Uncharted 4.
And I know it got good ratings and everything.
Yeah.
But like for me, like those games and like even like back in the day, like playing those like like even like the James Bond games and everything like that on like N64, like great game when you're playing peer to peer. But I almost like kind of I know they had their like player lists, which kind of added to it for some people, but it was kind of like even like an Uncharted, it was like you run the same sequence over and over again, right? And it's like almost like no room
linear.
Yeah, and it's like almost like no room for interpretation. It's like, no, do this perfectly this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like kind of like a system. And then you get your reward. System. You get your reward. System. Get your reward. It's like it just seems so like brain dead, like he said. Like it was just kind of like too direct with its goals. And it became so just like do this, get this. Not like, oh, you had this imagination, this is your reward is killing like someone else in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So maybe we should give a little summary of the video. I think the point that stood out to me was the idea of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which we could explain in a moment, but also it was using this example of a study of children who were painting to illustrate this point.
Yeah.
So from what I remember, it was basically that they had a group of kids in this study, and they all loved to draw. They already liked drawing.
Yeah,
but
it was a classroom. It was
a classroom of kids, and they divided the classroom into 3 groups. And so one group were encouraged to continue drawing, but weren't given any kind of reward or feedback. They'll just keep drawing as you are. Another group was told that if you draw and you draw well, we're going to give you a certain reward for drawing.
Kind of like work.
Like I do my work, I get paid. Yeah, exactly. And then they had a third group where they did reward them, but they didn't tell the kids that they were going to get a reward. So they would do a drawing and thinking, oh, I'm just drawing for the sake of drawing.
And it was sporadic. I didn't really get if it was like sporadic, because I know they did the study over time. Yeah. Which I think means like they handed in some drawings and got nothing for it.
But then sometimes they'll get given,
and sometimes they did, and then it wasn't like a set reward either, I don't think.
Yeah, so they weren't drawing expecting a reward, but they were occasionally given a reward anyway.
Yeah.
And the result of the study was that the children who were the children who were given a reward, who were told that they were going to be given a reward, the quality of their work diminished over time.
And after they stopped the forced drawing times, they were less likely to draw.
To keep drawing,
after
the experiment was over.
Yeah, when they gave them free time to draw and they weren't getting reward, they didn't want to draw anymore.
Exactly.
Which you had just on that tie, because what I thought about there too was professional athletes. Right? So some athletes that kind of get into the position of being a professional, and then they just hate the game after that. You know what I mean?
Once it becomes for something,
like once it becomes extrinsic, let's say, you know what I mean, about the money and playing for a monetary reward and everything like that, and they kind of just like hate the game after that, or even like sometimes even happens younger for kids, like where they're really good at something, but maybe parents force too much of a extrinsic I can't even say the word today, extrinsic rewards on them, and then they lost their intrinsic value to the sport. Well,
that's actually exactly what I experienced growing up learning music, learning different instruments. Is that I don't remember how it started. I guess I just enjoyed listening to music, and I just expressed to my parents at some point that I would like to learn music, and they would very, very kindly enroll me in different courses to learn piano or learn violin, saxophone. But what I always found with each of the instruments is that I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed playing music. I didn't have to be told, play the music. I already enjoyed doing it. But as soon as I was told, okay, you need to prepare, learn this particular song because you're going to be given an examination at some point, and the examination is going to give you a grade. And you're going to be either rewarded for it or you're going to,
should you go to this class next or this or that?
And I completely lost all motivation. I gave up on instruments, and I would go from one to the other. But I still play music to this day, and the one that I stick with is the guitar, because the guitar was the one instrument that no one told me to play. My dad played guitar and he just had guitars around, and one day I just picked it up and just started figuring it out, and figuring it, even though it would probably be quicker to learn how to play, you know, a chord by reading it from a piece of paper or going to a teacher, discovering it for myself was such an intrinsically rewarding process that this, you know, I've stuck with it for the last, I think
didn't matter if you played the solo from November Rain of Guns N' Roses, like what you were doing was rewarding to yourself.
Yeah, because it's very it's a process of discovery and creativity, and I haven't stopped. You know, I still pick it up, and I love just to doodle and play with it and write music and come up with different things. And I've been playing it for the last, I think, like 20 years or so, nearly.
How are you now with it, like skill wise?
Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm not a virtuoso, but it's a hobby. You know, it's something that it's like an outlet. It's something that I don't have any external expectations upon me when I play it, which feels very liberating. So that, and I've spoken to people that have had very, very similar experiences with music, especially growing up. So that would be a kind of form of the intrinsic reward, where there's no explicit reward that you're going to receive for having done it. But the third group, so the one group where they were told they were given a reward, the quality diminished, and they didn't want to keep doing it after they weren't given the reward anymore. You had another group where they were told no reward was given, and the quality of their work was better. But then the third
and more likely than the first group to continue drawing just for their own sake after.
Exactly. Yeah. And then but the third group, where they were occasionally given rewards but not told they were going to be given rewards, for those children, the quality was the highest of all three groups, and they were the most likely to continue drawing after the fact. So sort of a combination of the two, where you're intrinsically driven, but occasionally you're given this reward, but you're not driven for the reward. The reward is just kind of a icing on the cake.
Hey, it's like, wow, that's kind of nice.
And that's actually what
I found. And then you're back at it.
Exactly. And that's actually what I found with music, is that, you know, occasionally I'll just sort of play something, and, you know, someone might tell me, oh, that sounds really nice, or I like that, what you're doing there. And that's an unexpected extrinsic reward or feedback. And that feels great. And that actually does inspire me to keep playing, but I never play with the intent of, in fact, when I've actually tried to write things thinking, okay, I'm going to write something so that I can play it for other people. Often I don't complete it, or I just kind of give up or get frustrated because maybe there's a sense of more expectations or whatever it is. It just doesn't feel as good.
It's almost like you're setting like a ceiling when you don't want it in that context. You know, it's like you just kind of want that freedom, and you're kind of like boxing you in, and like for that outlet, you just want full creative freedom. Right. And that could be kind of like, it could kind of like be like a yin and yang to something else. You know what I mean? Because I know you're like pretty good with like scheduling and like being on time with like things like that. So that could be kind of like your free outlet, then your scheduling thing. I think you're like, your fitness is somewhere in the middle, funny enough. You know what I mean? Where like you have that structure, but you want that certain freedom in that structure.
Yeah, exactly.
You're all three test groups in one.
Well, maybe that's the goal, is
maybe,
or maybe it's why we stick with it, and this is how we can relate it to a physical practice, because I don't think this relates strictly to video games. I think
I thought it of all contexts of life, relationships, work, right? Like especially lifting. And I was even gonna personally put it to like, even for me, like working out, and especially like going to the gym, like 90% of it is intrinsic. Like I'm there to ask my body questions. You know, I've moved away from just doing exercises, and I'm trying to do exercises and make my body do different things during those exercises, and just load differently and contract differently. And you know, for example, one of my new things I'm trying to do now is kind of put in the motion of doing a lateral raise as I do my bicep curls. So I'm trying to kind of,
So it's like this?
well, I'm not actually doing the lateral raise.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. I don't even know if it's gonna make sense. But so I try and think it's weird because I'm trying to get different connections to my insertions.
Mm.
So I'm trying to kind of hold almost like hold a different starting position and then do a
Mm-hmm.
bicep curl versus the classic just bicep curl. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get all these different areas to kind of spindle and work and contract in different ways so I can work on that whole rotation in any angle. That's like
Mm-hmm.
kind of what's going through my head when I do it. So I'm kind of like I do like weird things in like the gym now, but I do them sometimes in a little bit more conventional bodybuilding looking ways, but it's odd because I'll be in like odd positions
Mm.
and I'll be still contracting weird. And like I think where my extrinsic comes in there and that like rewards sometimes is like when someone sees you doing something weird and kind of asks you about it.
Mm.
Or you know what I mean? Or someone goes, "Hey, fuck, I don't know what you're doing, but you're looking good."
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not I'm not doing it for that,
Yeah.
like because like for me it's like when I when I can feel a connection in a position that I'm just trying to put myself in and I can feel that chain connect and then I feel strong throughout that whole range of motion and it's like something new that I haven't felt, let's say, ever, right? Because I'm getting a weird loosening now in my right shoulder into
Mm-hmm.
my whole like right side of my chain because I started to find out that because of my injuries on my left side was actually really kind of like loose
Mm.
like spaghetti. My right side was really tight. And I
Mm.
always thought my right side was a stronger side, but it was just the shorter side.
Mm.
So now I'm trying to kind of tighten up one side, elongate the other side. I'm getting this whole like from like my kind of like medial delt, kind of like where the AC joint is,
Mm-hmm.
into my armpit, into like my kind of like my lower lat area, and then
Yeah.
into my hip. And then I
Mm.
can kind of extend through that chain now and kind of lock it up. And I
Mm.
just feel such like openness and relief. And I can start feeling like, when the scar tissue starts breaking down,
Mm.
right? And you can kind of start feeling like almost like the Tin Man adding oil again. You're like,
Mm.
right? It's
Mm.
kind of like
Mm.
that, and I feel it again. But that's like all the intrinsic going on,
Yeah.
and I don't have like, as I said, like extrinsic goals in a sense of like I want my biceps to be like 22 inches,
Yeah.
or I want my delts to be looking like hockey shoulder pads. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like, how can I just do it better, whatever I'm doing at all times, whether I'm trying to lift it heavy, whether I'm doing body weight, which that's kind of why I found the F45 classes were really positive for me in a sense, because there's a lot of just compound movements, but we're outside. So it's all body weight,
Mm-hmm.
so like going through all these motions, I'm really trying to make every move that much cleaner, that much better.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And
Mm.
that's just how my brain works. But as I said, like it's kind of cool to like notice that context that you put it in and get like the slight extrinsic sometimes where, as I said, those people come up and they ask you questions or, can you give me some tips or, someone you haven't seen, oh wow, you look like really good, or like, wow, you look like really defined everywhere. And that kind of for me is not the look that it gives me that like not validation, but like that like happiness is
It's not why you're
more of
doing
like,
it.
yeah. And it's like, well, like because my goal is like connectivity, and I find that the look starts to happen with proper connectivity, like just
Yeah.
having those chains. You can even see with like your physique, right? Like working on all like the connectivity versus just like working on exercise, like you can see how everything works together,
Yeah.
right? And like looking at guys like Roy and Ito and all that stuff, you can like notice that cool video that he sent, just shaking like his trap up and down, right?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like almost like not them giving me validation, but validates to myself, like, hey, this like crazy shit that you're thinking of, that you think you're insane in your head, is actually potentially working. Like the Wim Hof method too, like we talked about,
Mm.
like maybe it's not just crazy,
Mm. Mm.
yeah.
There's so there's another there's a book that I read a little while ago, and it was actually one that Ida recommends that maybe can help give a bit of a
Sure.
framework to what we're talking about too. And it was a book by a man named James P. Cass, and I
Yeah.
believe
Yep.
he was a religious scholar, but
James Picas. You
yeah
have to send that to me after.
yeah, well, he wrote this very, very short book. It's a very easy read.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only 100, 200 pages or so in big font, and it's not overly complex or verbose,
Sure.
very simple language. And the title of the book is Finite and Infinite Games.
finite and infinite games. I feel like
Yeah.
you've told me about this before.
Yeah. I probably would have. It's one that
Yeah.
I go back to because I think
Yeah.
it puts reality, it puts everything into this certain context that I think can
Exactly.
make it kind of useful to. It's
Yeah.
a useful lens to look at life through. So
Hmm.
some of the basic ideas are that everything is a game, first of
Yes.
all, and he goes on to
I agree with that for sure though.
yeah, and he goes on to explain what what a game is and what the features are of games. But he breaks these. He said there are basically two types of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games, and they share some things in common, but they also have some key differences. And so
Sure, of
the
course.
ones that resonate with me and really stuck out were the idea that in both a finite and an infinite game, the players must choose to play. So for it to be a game, the players choose to play, regardless of what the game is, whether it's a finite or an infinite game. So that's what they have in common.
Why
So
don't you give people a little bit of a definition of just finite and infinite?
so
Obviously.
that's what this is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
what this is. Because by explaining the differences, you start to understand
Okay.
what is one and what is the other through that contrast. So the feature of a finite game is that a finite game has certain set parameters. It will, maybe it's a parameter of time. We're going to be playing for a certain amount of time, or maybe
Sure.
it's until certain conditions are met. You know, we're going to play until a certain score is reached or until I achieve a certain outcome. Whereas an infinite game it uses barriers, but only to continue to play.
Sure.
So that's one of the key differences. In an infinite game, the purpose of the play is for the play to continue. In a finite game, the purpose of the play is for the game to stop. So
Yeah.
so you think of that in terms of maybe professional sport, right? Like the purpose of a soccer match in a professional context is the purpose of the play is for that game to actually end,
So it's
right?
finite.
Yeah. So you're
90
playing
minutes plus extra time.
exactly, and you're playing to win the game. You know, one winner, or maybe there's a draw, but in the tournament, ultimately there's going to be a winner. But you're playing so that you can actually stop playing.
Yes.
Whereas in an infinite game, you play and you can use parameters like time and score and other things, but the purpose isn't the parameters and for the play to end. You're using those parameters so that you can actually continue playing. So you might have, you might choose soccer, and within soccer there are certain parameters. Okay, we're going to use a ball. We're not using a football, like a rugby ball. We're using a soccer ball, right? That's a set feature. Maybe we're going to play to a certain score, but you can use those parameters just to allow you to keep playing. You and I might play a game where, okay, we're just going to kick the ball around for 10 minutes. Or we're going to go, okay, we're going to go till we get to a certain score, or first to 10 or whatever. But the reason that we're doing it isn't so that we can actually just finish it. It's so that it's because we both like playing a game together. And we're using those parameters just to give us some boundaries to work within that puts that, so that it actually is what it is and it's not too open.
Yeah.
So I think when we think of it in terms of like choosing to play or for the play to continue, one of the beautiful messages of the book is that it gets to the end and the final line of the book is there is but one infinite game. If we think of reality and life, well, nothing that we do until we die, but even then arguably our things do carry on.
Sure.
There is no end.
They do carry on.
Yeah, they do carry on. So you're not living
unless one day before we die, the whole earth explodes or something crazy like
but even
that.
then the universe will still continue.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
not the human race.
Yeah, maybe not the human race, but life will still, something's still going to happen.
Imagine. Fuck.
Yeah. So
mind-blowing.
So it's not like you live your life in the sense where, okay, I'm going to make X amount of money and then the game's over and then life's over. It's like, well, I'm going to make X amount of money so that I can then, expand my options and do other things, whatever, and keep the play going. Jordan Peterson talks about this idea that perhaps a good goal in life or a purpose in life, or what makes life meaningful and makes it enjoyable, is being invited to play more games. People who are invited to play many games tend to be happier than people that aren't invited to play any game at all. And that might be a game of simply, hey, do you want to come to the coffee store and sit down and have a coffee with me? Do you want to do a podcast right now? and just have
Yeah.
a chat. You know, it's this invitation to play.
Yeah.
If you're never given any invitations to do anything, that would be a pretty miserable life, you know, a very lonely life and a very isolated one and a meaningless life.
We let's say in majority of contexts, because there's always people that there's always the in life there's always the anomalies, right?
Well, can you give me an example of that? Because I would actually challenge that point.
I'm sure there's someone out there. I personally don't know people that are into solitude, but yeah, there's definitely people that are into solitude.
Well, let me present it to you this way. When the worst punishment that we can impose on someone
Solitary
is
confinement.
solitary confinement.
Yeah, you're right.
If you isolate someone from the rest of reality, cut them off from every social connection, from any other form of influence, that's the worst
You're right.
punishment we can impose on someone.
True.
Um,
True.
but when
Yeah,
you're in,
because you're right though. Because even if let's say I were to go to a cabin in the woods, there's still some sort of social aspect in a sense of like again, wind, air, elements, animals, sounds. You know what I mean?
vegetation, yeah, you're interacting.
Yeah, because those don't forget we're not the only living organisms, right? That doesn't just because we're saying social interaction, that doesn't necessarily mean just talking, me and you,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like society, whatever society you're in, right? That could be nature society, so society of something. It's a system,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So like that, yeah, that solitary confinement is just those brick walls.
Yeah, and so I think if we can relate this back to the take this idea that like everything's a game, but I think that it's when we look at reality as if we get too myopic, too focused on the finite games and
Yeah,
don't see these finite games as existing in a context of the infinite game that is life, and then
mm,
we have these finite games just so that it allows us to keep playing,
sure.
then I mean, I just don't think that's a very good quality life. And I can think of some specific examples, and we can make this more tangible related to training. So I've worked with clients who have very specific goals, but the goals
Yes,
are extrinsically motivated. Okay. So it
yes,
might be, I, I want to get, you know, like maybe you talk about biceps. I want to get 20-inch biceps, but it's completely missing the context of, well, what's your structure like? Who are you?
yeah.
Why do you want to get 20-inch biceps?
let's
And
let's go let's go even I think maybe better example would be like, and I got this a lot, getting ready for like a wedding.
mhm,
Like I used to get that a lot of consultations, like whether they were the bride, whether they were the groom, whether they were in the wedding party, or it was like they haven't seen family for a long time. I want to get ready for the wedding
mhm.
because I think this context is really good for extrinsic motivation, because biceps, at least when the guy gets 20-inch biceps, he might stay and keep 20-inch biceps by continuing work, even though it's extrinsic.
But I've actually never
But
found that. I've actually never found that to be true, because the
yeah,
people
well, theoretically, but
because the people that focus on that extrinsic goal of I want to get 20-inch biceps actually don't stick with it long enough to get the 20-inch biceps anyway.
sure, fair enough, fair enough. But let's say they did. The wedding one is what I've seen. A lot of people come in is make crazy changes with their body, actually put in work for this extrinsic motivation, and it seems like it's intrinsic at times too. And then post wedding, post, like bridal shower party or whatever, just no more.
Hmm.
And it's crazy how it shows like how strong extrinsic can be, but how, like as you said, it's like a cutoff.
Well, I've never seen someone get motivated to get like I've never seen someone get better results by training for a wedding than if they train because they just love training. You know,
Oh,
you've never seen.
totally agreed, right? And that's where like they need that intrinsic to keep going and build on what they were doing. But it's funny how, like, again, they get to their place, like, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds, I lost 20 pounds, where do they think they could look better or not, didn't matter, I did it, fit in my dress, and then now I don't need to wear my dress anymore.
Hmm, exactly. And I think that I'm thinking about a few different things. I'm kind of going in,
Yeah, yeah.
in multiple directions, but
Say them, throw it.
so I think there's a temptation in the fitness industry, especially because it makes for very compelling marketing and maybe short-term results
Sure.
to try to persuade someone with extrinsic motivation, like, you know, bombarding us with images of photoshopped models, for example, and thinking and kind of coercing people or influencing us into believing that if we don't look that way, or if we don't look a certain way, for example, or perform a certain way, then you're a bad person, that you're going to be miserable, you know, that you're not doing well. Programs are often sold in terms of what you're going to get out of it. You know, you're told the reward ahead of time. It's like,
of course,
I want you to go to the gym because you're going to lose 10 pounds in 6 months, or, you know, whatever, 12 weeks. You're going to put on muscle mass. You're going to get increased confidence. You're going to look better, feel better. Like, you're going to get all these, you know, and people are going to tell you that you're a great person. And this is how training programs are sold. But then people that get involved with that, you know, when I've worked with them, they fucking hate the process. They don't like training. They turn up late. They leave early. They don't put in maximum effort because they're just thinking, look, I'm actually not doing this because I want to do it. I'm doing this because I want to get a result. I want to get a reward. But then
that I was told I was going to get.
That I was told I was going to get.
But let's talk about the real con. You may add up to 20 pounds of muscle. You may lose up to 20 pounds. And then where I think that's even more dangerous and detrimental too is, not only are you not meeting the extrinsic goals that you've kind of set on yourself and then using that as extrinsic motivation, but by it saying you may add up to 20 pounds means that somewhere someone did add 20 pounds technically.
Yeah.
And then that makes it even harder on you, because not only are you not internally motivated, you're externally motivated for this goal, and you buy it based on adding that 20 pounds that they told you you're going to add in that 6 weeks. But then you're already not even adding 2 pounds within the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're like, not only am I, all my goals extrinsic, so I can't even motivate myself to say, you know what, who cares? You know, let me just keep going, see what happens. I'm enjoying it. It's like, doesn't matter how much sometimes these people are enjoying it. It's like so detrimental. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's, I guess it becomes very tricky to then, and it's very difficult for trainers, especially because I think it's very important to come up with goals.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is something I've been really focusing a lot on in the last few years, is recognizing that self-defined goals, I think, are probably one of, if not the most important factors, at least in beginning a training program and sustaining it.
Now,
and
do you think if someone comes into you with very extrinsic goals, that let's put it this way, do you think there's a process in having someone start to understand and want to create intrinsic goals if they have very extrinsic goals? Or have you found that they're very just stuck on staying one way or the other?
That's a good question.
And have you found a successful way of doing that, or have you had success in doing that, or failures?
I think a great teacher, a great coach of any context, is someone who acts as a mirror, and they help people see themselves for what they are. And I think if you can help someone who's coming with you, look, if someone's just coming with you with a goal, I think it's generally maybe a good idea to work with them, because maybe there's hope there. Maybe there's hope that you can help them get to somewhere that they want to be. But if through working with them, through conversation, through your interactions, you can act as this mirror and you can show them or help them understand where their goals are coming from.
Yeah.
Then, and if that person's really, if they're receptive to that, I don't know what the quality is that you know,
that allows
someone that allows that to happen.
An environment for it to happen.
But if someone, because I've had successes and failures, but I think if you can help someone see what is motivating their goal, then I think that's where you have hope. So if someone comes to you because they've been, you know, look, let's say it goes all the way back to childhood, and they've had parents who have just belittled them in the way that they look and said, you're fat, you're ugly, you know, you should.
Of course.
And so they've got this deep insecurity that they're a piece of shit. And so everything they do in life is really just to, you know, appease this.
Yeah.
It's to appease really their parents, but then to appease the rest of society as a result, because they think, oh, well, I'm a piece of shit. They've internalized that I'm a piece of shit, I'm ugly, I'm overweight,
because
or whatever.
of this. Yeah, because of this.
Then but if you can help them understand that that's actually where the goals come from. I mean, these are deep things, right? This
Yeah,
is
of course.
really getting
It's
to know
not easy,
someone.
by the guys. These are not easy things, right?
Yeah, because it requires a bravery and a courage to actually look at yourself honestly and with
Yeah.
an attempt of looking at yourself objectively as well.
Yep.
If you can understand that, then maybe you start to see, well, where did I get this impression from? Where did I get this idea that I have a problem that I need to fix? That seems to be, is it a problem? Do I actually believe I have this problem, or have I just internalized someone else's
Yeah.
negativity and taken it on as my own? And if you could
Yeah.
realize, well, I've actually done that. I've actually taken on someone else's negativity as my own. And you can work to then, well,
Remove that.
this isn't actually what I want. Maybe
Yeah.
what I want is maybe just to feel okay with myself,
Sure. And whatever that means.
and whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then you can explore further. Well, what do you actually enjoy? And maybe they don't know what they enjoy. Maybe they don't know what they like. And then as a coach, you can show them, okay, well, why don't we try this for a little while? Why
Yeah.
don't we try that? And then you observe and you say, oh, you seem to really enjoy this. Or, they tell you, maybe they say, wow, that was really fun. I had a great
Yeah.
experience.
And you can kind of lead them from an extrinsic to an intrinsic by like playing on what they enjoy, still getting their well-rounded routine and what they need, but like kind of, amplifying certain things they kind of enjoy to do and make that more like, you kind of breed that environment where they want to explore, you know what I mean? And give them opportunity to explore. I think a big thing too with helping people become intrinsic, especially in fitness, is, especially from like our positions and a lot of trainers positions, is showing people, and it's leading by example and being intrinsic yourself, and then being honest with people and showing them that, like, because a lot of people, don't forget, they look at us as like not even an end goal, like unattainable. Right? And I'm not boosting myself at all, like, you know what I mean, like trainers in general, you know what I mean, like, oh, I don't even want to look like him, or I can't, you know. And I think being honest with them and telling them the struggles that you're going through. And the one thing that I found, like, teaching classes, is when I'm performing the exercises, I'm not just performing the exercises to perform the exercises as like a model. I'm putting like 100% effort into getting better at these exercises. You know what I mean? So when people look at me, and, sometimes I fall over, sometimes I don't look so great doing it, but I think what it shows is kind of that, like, that kind of, that validation of like, hey, maybe I'm not doing it the best, but even like someone that's doing it the best misses shots. You know what I mean? And that kind of changes your extrinsic goals to, like, because you kind of like sometimes put people on pedestals, or like certain things in pedestals, right? And like that's where the extrinsic goal comes from. Like, I want to be like this person, because in their mind, this person, again, like Michael Jordan, doesn't miss a shot. If you talk to Jordan, he'll tell you straight up, you just keep shooting, you miss. You just keep shooting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think like if you're more honest with yourself and you kind of have intrinsic goals as a coach, that will definitely, hopefully, be able to come into your sessions, and you can teach that. But I think a good thing with that too, with people, is being honest with people, right? Because I think that's another weird thing from coaches too. Like I felt this in the beginning a lot when I started, was I felt that I needed to be perfect during the session, couldn't make mistakes. And if I did anything wrong, I felt like the people knew. Right. And
I'm
I
a
think,
fraud.
I'm a fraud, or like, I couldn't talk about like necessarily my struggles I was having in the gym, or, and like maybe
I don't appear weak.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think the, the times in which people appear the strongest are the times when people are honest and vulnerable, and honest with themselves, and like almost vulnerable in a sense, and allowing people to understand that, like, we're all the same. You know what I mean? Like, I'm having the same struggles you're having, in a different context, but I'm having the same struggles you're having, hey, guess what? You're at step 5 of this movement. I'm at step -3 of this movement. You know what I mean? Who cares what movements we can do? We're all in the same kind of boat. And if you can kind of teach that intrinsic, if you can have it in yourself, and you can talk about it and recognize it, I think it's very healthy in all aspects of life to kind of pass that on.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just thinking that I wonder if we go through life, and a problem with these extrinsic motivations is that
Yeah.
we assume that we know who we are. And
Yeah.
you know, we see this in children a lot, right? With this problem of identification, we
Mm,
form our identity around external factors. I am a person
sure.
who listens to this type of music. I listen to death metal, not country.
Yeah.
I listen to this particular artist and not that one. I wear Nike, not Adidas or Adidas, right?
Yeah. I
I
were both together, bro.
Yeah, whatever it is,
Cross collab.
or even, personally, I was speaking with my wife about this earlier. I
Yeah.
recognize that part of my identity that I've associated with is that I'm a black sheep. I'm a contrarian. Whatever you tell me
Sure.
to go left, I'm going to go right. But I form my identity around, in a sense, that idea that, whatever you think I am, that's what I'm not.
Yeah.
But even that is just a fixed way of thinking.
Yeah.
That can't always be true.
And then they could start, and then people start thinking who you are because that's who you are. And then that's a conundrum because you don't want to be what people think you are, but then they start to know what you are. And then you're like, wait, they actually, I got blurry, but they actually
Sorry.
kind of, what the hell's going on here?
Whoa. There we
Whew.
go.
It's like that. So it's like a weird conundrum at the end. It's like you're going in loops.
Yeah, and
That's why,
it's an endless cycle. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why kind of it's just like that quote from Bruce Lee, like be like water. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Crash. Like if you want to enjoy something and it's mainstream, enjoy it.
mhm,
If you want to enjoy something and you're the only person in the world, enjoy it.
mm,
And you have levels of each, who cares?
mm,
Right?
mm.
And I think like that's we were kind of talking about like the crazy right and the crazy left. And like it's like everyone just wants to be outside of a box by putting themselves in a box.
Mm.
It's really weird. It's just like, hey
Yeah.
man, don't even look at the box.
I'm the person who doesn't sit in a box, and
Just
we are the people who don't sit
yeah,
in a box. It's like
yeah.
that's a new box.
Bro, think of the box as Foursquare. It's paint on the floor.
Mm,
You want to step
mm.
in the box, go play the box.
Yeah, yeah,
You want to go walk around the track or walk on the grass, go walk on the grass.
yeah.
Like it's an imaginary line. And I think that's what people
Exactly.
forget, you
And
know?
and and so I think the problem is that when we assume that we know who we are because of these external sources of identification, well, I'm
Yeah,
someone who does this, I'm someone who does that, I have these kind of friends, I think this
yeah.
way, whatever, we lose we lose sight of the reality, which I
And
believe
and of-
is
and the root of the things that usually we're aiming for.
hmm hmm
You know what I mean? Usually like our causes, right? Whether it's going to the gym, to get big biceps. Why do we want big biceps? Like a lot of times people sugarcoat, but like I want to feel healthier. I want to be healthier, and then they go with extrinsic ways of doing that, right? But it's like,
yeah,
if
you lose
we
sight.
figure,
Yeah,
yeah, if we figure out the root of what we want, just like you were saying, talking with clients and really like, getting to the root of what they're looking for and the honesty and the truth behind it, it's just such a different impact, but it's easy to lose sight of it.
but take this as an example. Like, imagine the guy who drives past in the brand new Lamborghini, revving his engine,
Yeah,
and maybe that guy has convinced him, guy or girl, convinced themselves that
person,
they wanted that Lamborghini, that goal in life was to get this Lamborghini because Lamborghinis are sick and I want to get this Lamborghini. And when I get this
yeah,
Lamborghini, I'm going to drive around and show it off. But maybe the
sure,
reality is more like something like, well, that person is lonely. They feel inadequate. They feel like they aren't enough. And so they need to
yeah,
put themselves in this outfit of this Lamborghini so that they
sure,
can get attention from people and people will look at them and turn their heads and ask them questions and get to know them. And really the root of it is that they're lonely. But if you
sure.
tell that person, hey, I think you're doing this because you're lonely, they're going to tell you, fuck off, man. But if they
Look at
come to
all the
that,
people around me.
look at everyone looking at me, yeah. But if that person comes to that
Yeah.
realization themselves, then maybe now you're in a situation where you can change. And I think,
Now let's be let's play devil's advocate here, because like we talked about finite and infinite,
mhm,
this could be someone that has an infinite goal of like just becoming a better person and whatever that means to them, and the Lamborghini could just be a finite goal.
Yeah, yeah,
right? So it
exactly.
could be like, hey, you know what? I want to make time in my life. And that means, you know what, having a lot of money and time to do whatever I want. And, you know, I actually like driving a Lamborghini. I drove it once. I want to drive a Lamborghini, you know, so along with making time and money, I want to be able to have enough time to drive my Lamborghini and buy one, right? And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily to, you know, it's just kind of like a finite goal of like, you know, I want to live a certain way or whatever,
But you
you
can you
know, and
can you
then
can you can kind of tell, you can kind of intuit when someone's doing
of
that, right?
course,
Like
it's like a Keanu Reeves versus like some bodybuilding macho man, like I don't want to say Rich Piana, because the more I listen to his craziness, the more I realize I think he did live a very intrinsic life.
mm,
And even to like do that much synthol and be that open about it,
eh,
and I know, you know, I know it weirdly comes off as like extrinsic, like he wanted attention, but I really think at the end of the day it was more like intrinsic. I think that guy really just like loved himself and like just did shit for him. But anyways, like more like those, like, you know, those guys that the types you're talking
well,
about.
I mean, you can tell if someone's driving down the street with their window down, their hair's done, they got like chains all over them, they got music blaring, they're revving their engine. Like you can tell when they're doing it to get attention
Image wise, yeah.
versus they're doing that because that's what they actually just
Yeah.
enjoy doing.
Tattoos on the neck like a prisoner, but the cleanest cut haircut that he
Yeah,
doesn't even
yeah,
want the
yeah,
wind. He doesn't even want the wind to touch his hair, you know?
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
we can think of ways we do that ourselves, but I think what it
Of
comes,
course, of
I think,
course. Yeah.
yeah,
Of
that's the
course.
point, right? This is
Yeah.
meant to be a reflective practice of. It's
Of
easier to
course.
see these things in other people, but ultimately it's about looking at yourself, and that's actually what I think it comes down to. I think the real, the real intrinsic goal for anyone. I mean, look, I'm just going to throw out some. I could be completely off the mark here, but I suspect
This is what
that,
you think.
yeah, what I think,
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
what I think is that we actually don't know ourselves, and that the most powerful intrinsically motivating force is the desire to discover who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who am I? Like,
What does that mean?
what does that mean?
How does
You
that
know,
mean?
I
Why does that mean?
I take all these things for granted, but you know, why do I in these circumstances, why do I always react a certain way and then regret it afterwards?
Yeah.
Or, you know, I didn't choose that. I just keeps happening. It's these patterns. Wow, that's a feature of me I didn't even realize.
And it's okay, right? But some just ask why. You know, if you come to a conclusion of something, that's not saying you're going to stop doing something, you're going to do it forever. But it's, you know, like you're saying, it's like it's important to kind of like ask why, look internally and ask the questions of like, why am I the way I am? Why am I who I am? You
Mhm.
know, why do I think a certain way? Why do I react certain ways? Why do I have certain desires? And that's not to like, again, not to sound negative. It's not to sound it from a negative standpoint of like, you know, why do I do this? Like even good stuff. Like, why do I want to eat a salad?
Yeah.
You know what I
Why do
mean?
I want that Lamborghini really? Why do I actually want
Sure,
that?
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Why do I want to lose weight? Why do I actually want to
Mm-hmm.
lose weight? You know, why do I want to get
Yeah.
muscles? Why do I
And I
actually
think,
want that?
yeah. And I think when you get meaning behind stuff, and then the more honest and the more intrinsic that you can correlate those meanings, I think the more successful you can be in anything you do, any endeavor, whether it's learning an instrument, driving the Lamborghini and getting the Lamborghini, you know, fitness, job, life. The more that you can create a connectivity with the intrinsic and the why, I think that's when you can really start to almost like just have fun, because that's
Mm,
kind of like the whole point of like even like intrinsic pushing for a lot of times too, is the reason you do it is like it's enjoyable, you know, makes
exactly.
you feel, it makes you feel good, you know, and in any sense we call that fun, we're playing,
Yeah.
right? You know, and that's that, funny enough, just even saying that, that's one of the things that that really resonated with me from Cater, Haidar, and Aquam,
Mm.
when they would come to the gym.
These are three
And I
friends of
think,
ours.
yeah, three friends of ours, the Arabs, getting the Arab money. Aquam, shout out, making that movie soon. Um, and I think it like Cater's dad like loved to lift and everything, and I think the way he explained it too was very like, it was very intrinsic, like it was like almost like spiritually intrinsic, like the lifting,
Mm,
like it was very like it was for him and only for him. He was doing it for him, everything like that. And when they used to come to the gym, they used to call it playing.
Mm,
You know, I said, what are you working out today? Oh, we're playing chess today,
mm,
you know, or we're playing back.
mm.
And obviously there's like a language, like, translation and everything like that. But it kind of even goes to show you maybe like even the whole language, the whole culture itself places a different idea on stuff. You
Different
know what I
emphasis.
mean? Even if the word means playing, like we're playing chess, that could even set a whole different tone in your brain from day one on what working out is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And ever since I heard that, I kind of started just thinking of it like that, like playing, like just go have fun, even if it's in context, you know?
Well, you think of that in the way that they describe like judo or jiu-jitsu players.
Yeah.
You know, am I competing? Because if you're competing, that's suddenly finite. I'm competing because I want to beat that person so I can stop
Yeah.
doing this thing. But if I'm playing,
Yeah.
then it's as open as you want it to be.
Yeah. There's no end. You're just playing.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
like the game, like the video talks about, hopefully you guys watch it. Like you're playing, you know, you're just exploring. Like the games where you're just exploring, and there's a little bit of guidelines to set you, keep you in place, but in those guidelines you can even explore as much as you want and create your own guidelines,
yeah. And I think, look, I'm gonna go into. I'd be interested to see what you think about this. I think that the process of creation
Mm.
seems to be uniquely human, as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any. Um, any plant or any other living creature
Yeah.
that intentionally creates. Obviously, things are created. You know,
Sure.
this all came from somewhere, but it's not self-driven. Like a rose doesn't intentionally create, a new type of petal or it's doing it just automatically in response to its environment, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
kind of consciously thinking, I'm going to suddenly become a different plant entirely or change my features.
Sure.
A dog can learn tricks, but a dog doesn't design the tricks. A dog doesn't look at something and say, oh, I wonder if I can, balance a ball on my head. It's shown how to do that by a person, and then it's
Sure.
given feedback and rewards in order to, and it learns, oh, if I balance this ball on my nose, then I get food, so I'm just going to keep doing that. But it's not creating.
But wouldn't
Humans. Mm.
go on.
So I think human beings create. Now, this is where I'm going to go to get a bit crazy. There's another creative force.
Okay.
And I think we can call that, well, I guess in my current belief system, let's say, I think the other creative force you could call absolute consciousness.
Okay.
I think that the entire universe, if we look back from, whether it's the Big Bang or we know that there is a process of creation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you start with just like heat, just radiation. The heat
Yep.
starts to cool down and it starts to become, matter, like solid
Yep.
form. That matter starts to combine and starts to become more complex. We start to get inorganic materials. We then start to get organic materials, like we get soil, for example. Yep. The soil then starts to create organic life, like germs. And then the germs can contribute to things like vegetables. We then get animals, and then we then get man. And there's this process of creation that happens within the universe itself. So I think that there is both an absolute consciousness. There's a universal force of creation, but also within man, we as man is in a unique position ourselves to create too. And I think this is what it means by the old saying that the old Christians saying on it, and probably exists in Islam as well. I'm not entirely sure, but I'd be very surprised
Probably
if it
in
isn't.
some sort of literature across the board.
Yeah, which is that man is made in the image of God. And so I think from my perspective, this creative force that drives everything in the universe, that drives creation in the universe, we can call God.
Sure.
And man too creates, and we're also unique in that sense. And so man being made in the image of God, I think that in some ways that's what it means. And therefore I think the process of creation is an ultimately good force. It's a good thing. It's what has allowed us to be here. It's what drives everything.
Allows us to keep going. And it's funny in that context too, like you could almost look at I don't want to say heaven, but like they're just continuing that cycle. Is you get put in the ground, right? You get eaten, or usually, or whatever, how it happens through the whole cycle, evaporation, heat, you know, everything that happens. It's just like, it's that consciousness. You're part of it at all times, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're going to get eaten by something, you're going to get excreted by it, you're going to get evaporated, and you're going to get recycled. And again,
but not just your material form, your influence is
sure,
also
sure. Yeah.
recycled and
Yeah.
used, you know.
Yeah. To
You
a certain extent.
like your values, for example, you know, you could pass that on to your friends and your children even, and your children
Yeah.
will carry within themselves something that they got from you.
Yeah. Well, this is what made me sad a little bit about the stuff that happened in like Lebanon, right? And like just like how it demolished that amount of area. Like I kind of just mentioned it when I was talking to someone else. Like lineage could have been gone that day. Like certain like people's lifelines, people's family lines could have just been exterminated that day.
Yeah.
Like no more, never again, gone.
Yeah.
And that could even mean like, that could mean like little, you know, that could mean little mannerisms, little this, little that will never go forward.
Language, history,
anything, right? Anything, like just, you know, like they're never going to be never necessarily existed in the same way again, you know. But it, as you said, it's crazy how it's all part of that bigger consciousness that it just keeps going and keeps creating, you know. Every action has a reaction, but that's creation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, it's sporadic, but it has this, it's almost like finite and infinite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like finite and infinite. It's like,
we have
the
a
world's
finite
gonna keep,
body.
the world, yeah, and the world's gonna keep spinning no matter what. Things have happened, you know, hopefully no matter what, eventually, who knows? You know what I mean? Flat Earth, not a space company, or not a space, what is their bullshit they talk about?
I don't know.
No, fuckers, I screwed it up because I'm not even that crazy. But yeah, it's just kind of like funny how like, yeah, even like art, like even like the process of Earth in a sense, and the universe, finite goals on Earth are our life cycles. The infinite
finite
goal,
games,
and the infinite game is like the continuation of Earth and the life cycles
of everything,
and the universe and everything. You know what I mean? Earth can explode, but as you said, that's part of the infinite game at that point.
Yeah.
Or no, that's part of the finite game at that point. It turns to finite, and then
reality
there's still
still
more
goes
infinite.
on. Yeah.
It's
And
craziness, eh?
You know, the human being is this amazing creature because we choose the direction we want to develop in, the direction we want to go. And it's that act of choosing that actually ensures that we can, that happens. If you decide, I want to get stronger, it's actually that decision, that conscious decision that you've made, that is the first and necessary step to you getting stronger. If you didn't make that decision, it would never happen. That doesn't happen to animals, right? Animals, they don't decide, oh, I want to learn how to, you know, a dog doesn't decide it wants to learn how to swim and then starts practicing in the pool.
Yeah.
Humans do. With their animals are locked in. They're born with it. They have fixed features.
Sure.
I love the example of the mountain goat. Mountain goat born on the mountain, instantly scaling the mountain. Human being born nothing.
Mental, by the way.
Yeah. But a human being.
Guys, if you've never seen a video or picture of a mountain goat on a mountain, please.
But the babies, instantly they can do it. Human beings have to learn everything. And at a certain point, the only way to continue learning is to make the conscious decision, the intrinsically motivated decision to develop in a certain direction. And I think
you'd almost say like animals are like so extrinsic only. Like they have just goals. Like you wake up, you eat, you hunt. You wake up, you eat, you hunt. And if you don't do that, you just kind of like die. There's like no problem solving in a weird way.
Or maybe they have intrinsic goals in that it's just pure survival.
Sure.
I'm hungry. I feel hungry. Okay, so I'm going to eat.
Yeah, but it's
But for human beings, we can decide what our goals are. So, and it's the process of deciding what our goals are that allows us to get there, to grow. And I think
Yeah.
this is ultimately a good, this is good. This
Of
is a good
course.
force,
This is how we're here.
well, you talked about,
This is how we're here doing
yeah.
this.
And you talk about the idea of heaven. I came to a position where I don't think there is this fantastical place of heaven when you die and you go to heaven or you go to hell. I think heaven and hell are states of being that you can be in one moment. In one moment you can be in one place, and the next moment you can be in the other.
Sure.
And I
Of
think
course.
the only path to heaven is through conscious action, and maybe motivated
Yeah.
intrinsically motivated action.
Well, and to even let's break it down, right? Because I hate, I don't want to say hate. I disagree with a lot of religious stuff
Sure.
and how a lot of religious people act.
Yep.
But like, and I don't know in depth about the Bible and everything like that. But if you look at it, the things that I've heard about the commandments and like, be good to thy neighbor, don't steal.
Yeah.
They all sound like intrinsic qualities.
Yeah.
Like don't steal. It's not like you just steal. Like you have to tell yourself not to steal. You might be mad at your neighbor, but you got to remember, be good to thy neighbor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to like fight those feelings. And I feel like if people really listened, and that's kind of like the ongoing joke a lot of time with like religious people and everything, is like they don't necessarily even read the Bible or follow what the Bible says.
Yeah.
It's like that extrinsic.
They've identified with this title of Christian, and that's it.
Yes,
They've left it there.
That's it. And they literally have left it there. They haven't followed the cycle of actually reading and learning and understanding the literature, right? And I think a lot of the literature, I haven't read in depth. I'm sure there's some things a lot of people would probably send and say, this is horrible or this is great or blah, blah, blah. There's both ends. But I think those commandments, the couple that I do know, they seem to be pretty intrinsic stuff, stuff that you have to kind of look internally to make sure that you don't do those things. You know what I mean?
It takes conscious effort because
yeah,
the automatic the reflex, if you're not conscious of it, would be, eye for an eye, or, well, if stealing, it's like that's an intrinsically motivated goal. I want stuff, I want material things. I don't have enough money or enough property, so what's an easy way to get some? I'll just take it from you. But I have to consciously think, well, I have to think it through. If I take it from you, well, then there might be other consequences. Or maybe you actually do it once in a while. Maybe you actually steal, but then if you pay attention, you realize, oh, that didn't actually feel as good as I expected it to. That didn't actually get me what I thought I wanted.
And I think this is even the part too, where I guess if people just took it, I want to even say not even complex, like even more for the surface of what it actually is, like confession and all these things is like, it's to show that like, hey, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
Don't worry, keep following this, and you're not going to all the time. So, let loose about it and talk a little bit of shit and say, hey, I fucked up. And we say, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
And then you go try and do that again. But again, I think so many people do everything extrinsically from like a lot of people in the religious, not I want to say everyone, a lot of people in the religious or that identifies religious or, Christian or whatever you want to identify as, Catholic, Orthodox, Muslim, whatever. It's from a lot of an extrinsic standpoint, as you said.
Yeah.
So they're not looking at the process. They're not going into confession kind of understanding what confession is. That classic case of the mobster, he goes kill someone, goes in confession, Father, I have sinned, and like I killed someone, that's it, see you later. You know what I mean? But goes and does it again. Right. And it's kind of like if they took it for what it is, if they kind of intrinsically asked questions and were there for an intrinsic reason, you know what I mean? You could tell the difference. You'd get more out of it.
Well, it's like comparing the example of the child who has inherited this idea from their parents that they're not good enough.
Sure.
And then they identify with that idea for their entire lives.
Similarly,
people inherit religion. You're born into a family of a certain religion, and so that's just who you are. So then you identify, well, I'm from a religious family, I'm a religious person, my children will be religious. It's just who we are. I've identified with that, as opposed to coming to it on your own. For me, I was...
And what goes along with that is, and I don't do this because of it, and I do this because of it, and I don't do this because of it, and I do this because of it, which again, at the end of the day is all okay. You do you. But the thing that I ask people is ask questions as to why.
But are you actually
Why?
doing you? Are you doing you, or are you doing what someone else told you to do?
Yeah, and that's it. At the end of the day, if you ask the questions why and you come to the conclusion as it's beneficial for you, you enjoy it, it's an intrinsic thing that you do, and like again, you know, it's for you, and I will not tell you not to do it. You
Well,
know?
I can relate personally in that I was put into a Christian school in primary school. So it's something I was told to do, and there were things I was told to believe. And I rejected it. And I went to atheism and considered myself an atheist or an agnostic, because I'm not going to believe something because you tell me to believe it. So in fact, and it's the contrarian again. You tell me I'm a Christian. Well, no, I'm an atheist.
Hey, and
right?
to fit into what you said earlier about your personality, about just being like the anti everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's through my own personal investigation and curiosity, and really just looking at myself and my own life. And now I've chosen not religion in a sense, but faith, you know, and I guess a sense of spirituality and a personal belief system when it comes to God. But that feels more good and more right to me because I've come to it myself, not because someone else told me to.
Of course.
And I just think it's so important to make conscious decisions, to choose these things rather than having the decisions made for you. And so, you know, related back to training, for example, and you ask about, you know, how to motivate someone to come to intrinsic goals. I think the worst way to do it is to tell them what they should be doing.
Yes.
You know, if you have someone come to you and say, well, I just want to, if someone has a motivation to train for whatever reason, but then your entire MO is just giving them, you need to be a little bit more muscular. You need to lose some fat. You need to be able to do this exercise. You need to be able to run this fast, you know, whatever it is. I think that's the worst possible way that you can help someone actually help themselves.
Yeah.
Rather, I think if you're listening to them, you act as that mirror. You help them
guide them.
You guide them. And then
know?
along the way, you offer them the tools that you have available that you think might be able to help them get even closer to where they need to be or to where they want to be.
Yeah. And again, don't forget, like at the end of the day, it's like guiding someone through a map in a video game that you've played. You know, like for example, Diablo, you don't know, like the map changes. There's different layouts of the map. And I don't necessarily know where I'm going either, but I've been through it. So I can help guide you and give you an understanding of how we're getting there. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, when they try and guide, they're just directing.
Well, isn't that the worst? Have you ever played a game with someone where they're just taking you through it? And,
you don't learn.
And they're like, oh, this is awesome. Check out this next bit and this next bit. And it's like, I'm not discovering this for myself. You're just, you're spoiling it.
Yeah. You got to really like, you know, help people along the way. You know what I mean? Like almost let them lead. And then you kind of nudge when they ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, he attacks that thing and you say, okay, hey, be careful when you attack that. Just so you know, that spits something out at you and it'll last, you know, the damage will last for 3 seconds and you might die.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, now I know. You know what I mean? Versus going to kill it. Blah, blah, blah. Don't let that thing hit you. And you're like, why? Just it'll kill you.
Or even letting people fail. It's like, I'm not going to tell you anything. You try it first, and then let's see if you can figure it. And if you really can't figure, and if it's getting to the point where you're so frustrated you're about to stop, I'll give you just enough information so that you can keep going.
Yeah. Or again, let them fail. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Because and again, like Diablo, you have a town portal scroll. You let them die, open a town portal, come back in. That tower gets you, bro. Now, okay, let's figure out how we can not get got.
Yeah, and if they keep making the same mistake over and over, at some point you might be like, okay, have you just? You might not even tell them what to do. You might just say, have you considered, you know, this other option? Have you considered just what about that? You know, just a little bit of a what about?
And I think an important part to put it back to training is breeding that environment of, I think, just like openness and exploration is very important. You know, one thing I was talking to a client before, and I think we talked about this on past podcasts, is, you know, I asked from that client to give me, you know, and I didn't want, I kind of put a little bit of an extrinsic goal on it, but just like we talked about finite and infinite kind of put together, sometimes you need them, you know, asked for that, you know, anywhere from that 5 to 10% of just open-mindedness and just, you know, go with the flow, fail if you have to, just really go into it without barriers. You know what
Mm.
I mean? Kind of set that little finite so you can have that infinite goal after, because you're trying to breed that environment, right? Where you can do it all the time, you know? And like, again, to like get in that process of like having them fail and realize that it's okay. Failing is
Yeah.
not bad. It's
Yeah.
learning,
Yeah.
you know? And when we fail, we could do two things after, you know, we can leave it, or we can ask ourselves why we
Try again.
failed,
Yeah.
right? And how can we do better next time? And I think that's where, as you said, a lot of people stop, right? Because you know what I mean.
It's such a big one. I have this experience with almost every client that I
Mm,
work with, and I suspect every trainer must, who's looking at it from this way, where you might give it, because you have to give them something that's certain parameters to work within. So you might say, well, look,
yeah,
we're doing a push, not a pull. We're doing squats, not dead. Like
of course,
there are
yeah,
certain goals in mind, but then when when that individual, that athlete misinterprets the means for the end. So they might say, well, look, I've told you to do 5 squats or whatever it is.
yeah,
And all they're thinking is the purpose of what I'm doing is to do 5 squats.
yeah,
But in my mind, it's like, no. The purpose isn't to do 5 squats. I'm giving you 5 squats to do. And so I'm just giving you, it's like a child. I'm just giving you a little
yeah,
playpen, but it's
yeah,
not about getting to the 5 reps. It's
yeah,
about using that time or those repetitions to
to get
focus and to
better.
learn and to get better and to learn something and to
Yeah,
discover something. It's not about, because simple repetition isn't enough. If I ask you to
yeah,
do neck circles for 10 minutes, if you're just waiting for the time to be finished, the quality is going to be shit.
yeah.
I know it's going to be shit. But
The way I'll explain it is, you might get better at the neck circles by not paying attention, but you're getting better within your confinements that you already have, right? So for example, if I did neck circles for 10 minutes and I did it every day and I didn't really pay attention, I would get better at doing neck circles with all my imbalances and all these issues that I have.
I would argue it actually would be bad, because it wouldn't be a circle, because you're going to start, because you're going to come up against something tight,
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
example, and you're
Yeah,
going to
that
go,
will,
I'm not going to push into that. I'm just going to just do what's easy. And then
yeah,
it ends up being this really irregular shape. So
yeah,
it's not actually what you intended to
yeah.
do anyway.
Agreed. But that 10 minutes gets easier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And that's where like it's
And then
setting
you're
those
patting
like,
yourself on the back saying, oh, I completed the goal. And now that I've completed the goal, I can forget all about it and move on. But it's like, no, I want you to do this for 10 minutes, pay attention. And then for
yeah,
the rest of the day, if you're paying attention, you're going to be so much more aware of your neck
yeah.
in everything that
That's
you do.
that's the goal. That's personally, at least our goal, right? Because we talk about this often, is getting people to understand that it's it could be so intrinsic in a way where you can start creating that correlation that there is no difference of movement in set parameters, unset parameters. It's
Exactly.
one body. It's all intrinsic.
It's all a trick. I
You
don't
know, it
care.
is. It is.
I would rather you do one intentional conscious rep than
Yep.
50 where you're thinking about anything else
Yep.
but what you're actually doing.
Yeah. And I joke with you, I've done this before. I'll go to the gym and I'll do one rep and I'll stop. I'll do one rep and I'll literally stop and I'll say, it's happened less and less now, because the more questions I've done a lot more problem solving, which gives you I would say a lot less roadblocks.
Well, you might realize that, well, in order to get what you want, you need to do more than one. But that requires
Sure.
doing one for a while first to think, okay, I'm kind
Yep.
of getting there, but what if I
Yeah.
try 2? Oh, when I do
Yeah.
2, it's actually getting me closer. Okay, now I know.
Yeah. And the way I kind of even explained it too is like, the more I go about it, it's almost, sometimes I call it like lane cement. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
sometimes you go to like do something again that you felt good doing, but you made it like a new connection because you're paying attention to it, but the cement's still kind of wet, and you go to do that movement again, you're like, oh, you know what, maybe I'll let it settle for a couple more days.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then after that, you can really do like those 2 reps. That's
That's
kind
a
of
nice
how I've like,
analogy. I like that.
yeah, that's kind of how I've like felt about it lately. Like the same with the shoulder. Like I went and I did arms, but I altered what I did on that day
Yeah.
because I wanted to work with, like I would say like half the cement was laid, but it's still a little bit wet. So I kind of wanted to work around those areas, piling those areas off. So those can like not get worked in, but you can work on the other areas, right?
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just kind of how I look at it now. And that's why, like, sometimes, as I said, I go in and, I felt something in my hip squatting, last week, let's say, and I felt like a release in my lower back, and I really felt my hip joint, like, accept that position a lot better, and then I'll go, like, let's say I'll do like a body weight squat 2 days later, you know what I mean? Just to kind of feel it out. And I'll be like, you know what? No, I'm going to stay away from like going to that full range of motion for a
The
bit.
cement's still setting.
Exactly. The cement is still wet. It's still wet.
If I start fucking with it now, I might actually ruin the whole thing.
That's when you get the stupid pigeon print stuck for
Exactly.
life. Or Ben and Steven with the heart 20
Yeah.
to 2009.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'd like to, I'm missing my family, so I want to spend a little bit more time with them shortly, but I want to finish on this thought, this little topic.
I need to eat also too.
Yeah. So I think what we're doing now is maybe a really good example of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this podcast is a finite game. We meet on a certain day. There are parameters. We meet on a certain day. We start at a certain time. We only go, there's no set time, but we're not going to go all day. We're going to go maybe for a couple of hours. We're going to talk
topics.
Exactly. We're going to have a certain topic that we talk about. But these parameters has now given us the freedom to talk about video games, training, philosophy, theology, the cosmos, the universe, like all these things, because we've had a bit of a parameter to work in, and we're going to keep doing it. But there's no sort of set. We're not doing it so that it can end.
Yeah.
We're doing it so that it can keep going.
Finite, to create infinite.
Because we find it, I don't know about you, I'm assuming this is the case, but I find it intrinsically enjoyable and valuable. It's not about we're not doing it so that we can get a certain number of views or make money or nothing extrinsic. I enjoy having these conversations with you because it helps me understand myself better in a way. Understanding you helps me understand me.
Dude, and talking to you and listening to what I say, listening to what you say, listening to your ideals makes me a better person, right? I always say,
why does it make you a better person? Why do you think?
It's more information, and I'm a big person on gathering information. You know what I mean? Even about your body, asking questions. And what we're doing here is we ask questions. We're breaking down, different ideas, different subjects, different viewpoints.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just, as I said, it just allows you to paint a bigger, better picture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The more blades of grass you can add to your grass, you can make that look more realistic in a picture. You know what I mean? And it's just, and hearing your viewpoints, it really just allows me to have that, like, to help me answer my own questions that I've been asking, again, hear different perspectives, keep me grounded. You know what I mean? And like, again, as I said, like, we're always kind of like the yin and yang, almost like, we're on like the same wavelength, but sometimes you're here, sometimes I'm here. And it really helps me stay like level and grounded. And I've found, as I said, like my training, and that this is just from even before doing the podcast, but like sitting and talking with you, my training, my personal life, my relationships, everything that after, like, we've met and hung out and talked so like just openly and like honest about stuff, I do feel like there's been so much benefit to my external life just outside of these finite moments.
Those are like those unintended rewards, those unintended consequences.
Yeah.
It's like you're not doing it for that, but the fact that that's happening motivates you to keep going as well.
Yeah. And kind of like if you're watching the video, like he's talking about Breath of the Wild, when you're like randomly building random blocks somewhere and you get a little bit of reward, right? It's like, you set these building blocks of life, of like talking about these things and like ideals and like, again, how you're going to live your life and expectation, all these things. And you have these building blocks that you set that you don't really notice either, but they're skills that you set. And then sometimes you get a random surprise. You're like, oh shit, hey, it's not necessarily because of this, but this definitely helped me lead me to this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's something I've been talking about lately. I think it's really important to kind of always hone back to even what they said about that study, like that middle. It always comes back to like that middle ground, right? I was talking about with Haidar a little bit about, the past and the future. And it's important to understand what you've gone through and what you learned. And it's important to have an idea where you want to go, but you can't do any of that unless you're present.
Yeah.
And the present is the most important, because you can't have a future without the present, but you can't have the present without the past.
Yeah.
But it's the most important because it's the moment in the present where we can break down everything of what we learned and how we learned it and how we're going to use that to go forward.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people live in the past and live in the future, and not a lot of people live in that present.
The Buddhists would argue that's the source of all human suffering.
Hmm. Wow. There you have it. And I honestly, that you say that, it makes sense, man. Worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or worry about things that have already happened that you can't change.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
you got to worry about what's here right now.
And
You
actually,
know,
that's something actually I noticed. Maybe it's easier to tell observing you than observing my own self.
sure,
But we've sat here for 2 hours, focused on each other, talking about these ideas and being present with them.
mm-hmm.
But if we, if we were just living our lives kind of without this kind of without the parameters, without this intention, without an intentional practice here,
Sure,
then one second you're on Instagram, the next second you're on Reddit, the next second you're in the kitchen, the next second you're out, like, and your
sure,
mind is just all a million places at once. And I really love that this, like, I can see it in you. Is
mm-hmm.
but somehow it just creates the conditions to be present in a way.
Yeah. That's
And
why that's why it's important, right? Like as you said, solitary confinement. Like that's why these things are important, because this really does help be in that moment, be present, and it really, again, unintentionally gives us that skill to pay attention more in real life. And that's why I love fitness so much too. And that's why I love like working with you and training with you, because a lot of it was like in the moment. Well, how do you feel?
mm,
You know what I mean? Well, it's great you held it for 30 seconds, but how did it feel?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? And like that really started to like resonate with me, and like, and it was just like, it was really important in like my development. It really started to make me understand fitness wise, you know, what does feel really mean in those
mm.
contexts, you know,
Or just like, what do I feel? What did I feel?
right? And before, it was like when I would do movements, it was like, did you as perform the reps and the sets?
Yeah,
How did it feel? Well, it went up, so it felt good.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? And then I really started to ask kind of like how I felt and what was I feeling and why was I feeling it,
mm,
and paying attention to that. And then what I found more of was, it was almost like that's why I love lifting now. It's so present for me.
mm,
You know what I mean? And before, it was wonderful. I loved it, but I always sometimes even caught myself like thinking of other things, and I couldn't focus,
yeah,
because what are you focusing on? You already have the weight on the bar, and that's all you had to do,
yeah, yeah,
right? You hit the extrinsic, platform. You don't you got gains, you got bigger. Don't get me wrong, right? Like you're getting rewards for it, but it was kind of like, I go up, I go down, the weight's on the bar, I did it, it's done, right?
yeah,
As opposed to asking the questions continuously. And that's what made this process, like, as I said, so different for me, and like kind of more like holistic, and like just in that sense of like, paying attention to picking up a basin now.
yeah.
Because it's so like intrinsic, it's like, I don't know, it's refreshing. It's good.
Good.
It's nice to be present.
Yeah,
I think we should end there, and I think you should go be present with your family.
yeah. I miss my son and my wife.
Yeah.
I go give
Go
them
play with
kisses.
him. Go be present. Go help him understand his internal.
And just, yeah, yeah,
And honestly, by the way, this is why I think this is important too, because, as we talked about, goals in life, from like a lineage goal, our goal is to kind of be able to progress, right? Create something better,
and not just repeating
right?
the same cycles.
Exactly. Create something better. And that takes like a real intrinsic way of you asking questions and living an intrinsic lifestyle, to ask why, who, what, where, when, why do I do this? Where did I get it from? All these things,
Yeah,
because you're trying to weed out what you perceive as bad and keep what you perceive as good, and
yeah,
build on the bad stuff to make them good. So
yeah,
hopefully you can teach your son to do the same, and him the same, and grandchildren, you know what I mean? And all that lineage going forward,
yeah. Exactly.
and hopefully breed good people, as we try and do.
Yeah,
Well, as you've already done successfully. I will one day.
yeah. Sooner or later. Hopefully
Sooner.
sooner.
I think sooner, not like soon, but I think
Yeah,
sooner than later. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Heading that way.
Oh man, this has been great. Thank you.
Benjamin, as usual, see you on Mars.
Or perhaps
Quickly
Venus.
before we quickly before we go, would you go to Mars if you could take your family?
As it.
If there was like, let's say like there was like because obviously the first people to go to Mars are not going to come back.
Yeah, could we come back?
No, you're on Mars for life.
What's it like?
I don't know.
Are there other people there?
You'll go, yeah, you'll go as a little colony.
Is there like a city already set up there, or do we have to build it all from scratch?
What's it called? The Arnold movie, like that.
Oh, like Total Recall.
Total Recall. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't.
No,
I don't think I would, because I guess I suspect that it's like anything. When you introduce something that change has to be gradual. It seems when you introduce something too quickly, we have a lot of problems. And I think human beings,
part of the problems.
Yeah, I think human beings have evolved to live on Earth. And I think if you were to go to Mars, I think there'd be a lot of unintended consequences.
Sure.
And I can't think of any obvious benefits.
Test subject.
Yeah, like there are no obvious benefits except that extrinsically motivated goal of being like the first person to do it and having the title. Yeah, first on Mars.
Yeah.
But I think if Earth was uninhabitable and Mars was kind of the way to go, then yeah, out of necessity, I'd probably take him. But at this point, I think life
Earth
on
is where it's at.
Earth is where it's at.
Earth is pretty good. All right, Benjamin.
All right, man. This has been episode 7, Meditative Monkeys podcast. What did you do earlier? You'd like a frame? Is this one?
Oh, dude, careful. They'll come get you.
What is
the Illuminati.
What is this? White power now?
The Illuminati. No, yeah, the Proud Boys or some bullshit. I don't fucking know, man. It's also a problem when these guys are flashing signs to the police, and the police are like, "Oh, Jesus."
Anyway,
yeah,
another topic for another day.
It's a whole other topic. Go enjoy your family, Benjamin.
Right,
this has been Meditative Monkey, episode 7.
We're out.